Welcome to the Fun Astrology and Merriman Market Analyst Saturday Financial Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. Thanks for joining us. This, of course, the free weekly newsletter published every weekend on MMAcycles.com by financial analyst and astrologer Ray Merriman. And it's nice to have things back to normal, it seems. The market is acting more normally. Ray is back writing the newsletter after being covered the last 2 weeks by Gianni and Puyan, and I'm back in my booth. So this is the newsletter for next week, but let's take a look week past before we move forward. And the first article is from Friday's CNBC.com. Job growth was stronger than expected in April, despite worries over the impact of President Donald Trump's blanket tariffs against the United States trading partners. Non-farm payrolls increased a seasonally adjusted 177,000 for the month. That's slightly below the downward revised 185,000 in March, but above the Dow Jones estimate for 133,000. And then from Wednesday, Wall Street Journal says the U.S. economy contracted the first 3 months of 2025 as businesses rushed to stock up on imports ahead of the Trump administration's tariffs, and consumer spending slowed. The Commerce Department said U.S. gross domestic product, the value of all goods and services produced across the economy, fell at a seasonally and inflation-adjusted 0.3% annual rate in the first quarter. That was the first contraction since the first quarter of 2022. Now, Ray's comments for reviewing the week. He said President Trump must be getting close to making major trade deals. The stock markets of the world are showing renewed signs of life after their plunge during the dual retrogrades of Mercury and Venus, the retrograde chaos end, which overlapped mid-March through April 7th. This coincided with his early April Liberation Day announcement of dramatic new tariffs, which Bloomberg named Obliteration Day. However, by mid-April, he began walking back those tariffs, except for China, announcing a 90-day pause that will come up again in early July. The markets have cheered ever since. Will they cheer as we approach closer to July? Equity investors seem to believe the president will pull back on his next 90-day tariff threat, judging by the new 4-week high being made in most global markets. But will he? He hasn't pulled back on those threats so far before enacting them. Our call in the Forecast 2025 book was that there would be 2 double-digit declines in the U.S. stock markets this year, with at least one of those being 15 to 26%. The first decline into April 7th satisfied this price range. The question now for me is, will the next one be steeper or less steep? In Asia and the Pacific Rim, the Australian ASX soared to a new 7-week high. Its bottom on April 7th was the lowest ASX mark since December 2023, so it's starting to recover nicely. Japan's Nikkei and India's Nifty are now making 4-week highs and also recovering smartly from their multi-month lows of April 7th. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index made a new 4-week high, but its prior low was only back in December 2024. China's Shanghai Composite exhibited a shortened inside trading week. It, too, made a multi-week low on April 7th as Mercury turned direct, and 1 week before Venus did the same. It seems most equity markets made a low or lows around April 7th and have basically rallied since. Optimism about the future is returning, suggesting most investors believe President Trump will pull the rabbit out of the hat. But the Sun-Uranus conjunction is looming ahead on May 17th, when things could go awry again. It just so happens that this same aspect, which can pertain to the concept of chaos, is also a huge factor in his natal chart. In Europe, all 4 indices we track made new 4 to 5 week highs last week, between April 7th and 9th. Each also put in yearly lows, except the German DAX, which also fell back to its low of September 2024. In the U.S., the Dow Jones Industrial Average, NASDAQ, and S&P all performed similarly. That is, each made a new 4-week high, which followed yearly lows made on April 7th. The pattern was different in Brazil, where the Bovespa rallied into April 29th to its highest level since September 2024. In other markets, Bitcoin also began a new cycle as of April 7th to the 9th, rising to its highest price since late February. I'll have more to say about the longer-term cycles in Bitcoin in a webinar shortly, as I think the cycle picture is becoming quite clear now following our buy signal of early April. Gold made a new all-time high of $35.09 the prior week on April 22nd, but last week it gave up $300, falling to a weekly low of $32.09 on May 1st. That's quite a sell for 1 week in gold. Silver seems to be confused as to which way it wants to go, meandering back and forth between $31.50 and $33.50. Crude oil, on the other hand, is flashing bullish triggers with its decline to $56.39 on May 1st, a successful retest so far of its $55.12 low made on April 9th, which was the lowest price in 4 years. It will need to exceed $65 to exhibit a stronger bullish pattern. With Jupiter soon to square Neptune, its co-rulers, in mid-July, a large move up or down is indicated into this period, depending on whether prices can close above $65. Now, the short-term geocosmics section. First of all, a video that was on YouTube from ABC News. Trump blames Biden after U.S. economy shrinks. Quoting, U.S. President Donald Trump has shifted blame to predecessor Joe Biden for the country's economic decline after America's GDP shrank 0.3% for the first quarter of 2025. And then a quote from Groucho Marx. Who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? Ray says there's no shortage of news or blame these days, especially with President Trump at the helm and the media in constant agony from TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, a mental bias where everything going wrong is blamed on Trump. For that matter, there is no shortage of news flashes either with the president himself or the MAGA crowd suffering from BDS or Biden derangement syndrome, where everything wrong in the world is due to former President Biden. Blame or projection is a function associated with a lower-level Gemini emotional response, whereas a spiritual or even intellectual response is completely different and admirable. Jupiter, of exaggeration and therefore big blame, is currently in Gemini, which also happens to be President Trump's sun sign. Jupiter transiting one's sun sign correlates with a 12-year personal high cycle. Things usually go well then. Therefore, he may be able to pull this self-induced crisis off after all, recusing the nation and the world from the chaotic drama of his first 100 days in the second term of his presidency. His gamble has been dangerous, but it can pay off if he doesn't undermine his own plan at this stage. It's a big if you are not part of the MAGA crowd. It's certain that he will pull it off successfully if you are part of that crowd. Here's how I see it within the context of geocosmic studies, which is basically the universe's way of messaging to us where we are and where we're headed. In other words, as above, so below, which means we are connected like the macro and micro states of reality. We are now in the season of Taurus, the middle of spring, where things seem to be stabilizing after the raucous period of transitioning from end of winter, or mutable Pisces, to cardinal Aries. Both the mutable and cardinal want to be active and keep moving. The difference is that the mutable wants to be acting on several fronts at once. Cardinal is focused on starting one new adventure and taking it to a height and then leaving. But fixed signs like Taurus want to pause and assimilate, to think over their next move before the next mutable sign, Gemini, comes up in late May. Thus, the excitement and drama of March and April may pause. However, looming ahead on May 17th is the Sun conjunct Uranus, a signature of disruption, even chaos again, right as we prepare to enter the mutable sign of Gemini. In fact, this mutable sign of Gemini, starting around May 20th, may be particularly wild because it starts a rather turbulent cosmic storm. Between June 9th and June 24th, we enter the arena of Jupiter, of exaggeration, square Saturn, creating doubt, and Neptune, uncertainty. It is the most prominent long-term geocosmic cycle of the year, and its midpoint is right around President Trump's birthday, June 14th. That's important because the cosmic quality of the moment at the time of one's solar return is a portent of what is to come the next year. His next year will be the full expression of this massive geocosmic configuration. The macrocosmic signatures of chaos and turbulence meet up with the personal microsignature of chaos and disruption, and possibly brilliance. And this, right as we head into the 90-day due date of the next tariff roll of the dice. The best outlook here, in my opinion, is that these trade deals will be completed by the May 16th to 19th period. If so, Mr. Trump will seem like a brilliant genius and a superhero for saving the planet from an economic threat or opportunity that he alone, not Biden, created. If not, expect another adventure on Mr. Toad's wild ride in this experiment that could make it seem like we are living in a political amusement park. And on this ride, everything that seemed like it was going up, the stock market and the economy, could suddenly reverse and turn upside down again by July. It may all depend on how able he is to not interrupt his own path towards progress with second and even third guesses designed to outsmart his own self. I think an investment strategy going into this period should be based on how much one believes in the president's ability to reduce chaos, not amplify it. Unlike many outside of MAGA Nation, I think his trade plan could work out, assuming he doesn't suddenly undermine it with some new and novel twist his id wants to initiate. With all the Uranus and Neptune signatures coming up, as well as leaving the safe but temporary domain of fixed sign Taurus for mutable sign Gemini, with Uranus about to enter it, I don't think this is the best time to gamble with the nation's economy and OPM, other people's money. So although I think the plan could work out, I'm not overly optimistic that he'll stick to the plan of action that he has started. And as a double Capricorn, this is what worries me today and arouses doubts about the usually powerful bullish chart signals I'm seeing as the month of May begins. I may just follow the old stock market adage, sell in May and go away. I hope go away for Ray only means trading, not doing newsletters through the summer. What's that old saying? May we live in interesting times. You guys have a great rest of the weekend. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back on Monday.